You never know who's watching that you weren't planning to be watching, or you didn't know they were watching, so you didn't say or do those things that would be best for your image as a leader or best for their outcome as a follower. Because you just didn't know that they were watching. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. There's a lot of value in knowing that as a leader you have a particular avatar. You have a group of people that you intend to influence. Maybe they're people who work for you, or they're people who work on your team, or they're people that you serve with for someone else. But in this circle, in this group of people, you have influence. And that influence is an opportunity for you to impact people's lives. It's an opportunity for you to change the direction of their career, their educational goals, their demeanor, the way that they interact with people. That's what leadership is all about. But we often forget that there are those times and those places and those people who are watching from afar. We didn't know they were paying any attention. We weren't targeting what we said or did as a leader at influencing them. We had no idea the impact that our words, our deeds, our thoughts, our ideas would have on them. I was just recently watching a video of the Steve Harvey show, and Steve Harvey had a young man on named Walter. Now, you may have heard Walter's story, you may have even seen it on the show, but there are a couple of things that I want to point out about it, and Steve reiterated these a couple of times, but this young man was 20 years old and walked 20 miles to work because his ride bailed on him and his car wouldn't start. And so to get to work, he left the night before. 11 o'clock at night to make sure he was at work on time. He left the night before. I want you to think about what that requires of you as a person to make a dedication to walk almost 12 hours to get yourself to work. Many people would have simply called in and said, I'm not coming. But see, when all of this happened, Walter's employer decided to give him a car. Walter's customer decided, hey, let him come in the house and rest a minute. He's been walking all night. That's a tough expectation to put on somebody to walk all night and then come in and work all day. And yet that wasn't really the end of it. Because when Steve Harvey met the young man, Steve Harvey said, how did you get to be like this? And the young man said, Steve, you've been my idol all of my life. And Steve was almost in tears. Obviously, he doesn't know this kid. He doesn't know him from Adam. He doesn't know anything about him. He doesn't know where he's from. He doesn't know his background other than what they had to research for the story. But the fact that Steve started with nothing and worked his way to a multi-million-dollar media empire by grit, by being the kind of person that this young man is, that's pretty impressive. And his willingness and ability to do that is what made him who he is today. Well, this young man has seen that kind of impact and influence. This young man has decided that he wants to be that kind of impact and influence. So when money was raised for him from a fundraising campaign, a GoFundMe campaign, he donated $25,000 of that back to the organization that he belonged to in high school, who helped him develop the kind of character that made him who he is today. That's a pretty impressive young man. At 20 years old, to be able to put that kind of tenacity toward his first job, but also to be able to look back and say, I know where I came from, and I know who influenced me, and I know that I want to influence them. Now there's a $25,000 scholarship in the name of this 20-year-old man, just recently out of high school himself, who now has an opportunity to influence, even if only by name, dozens of young people and generations to come because of his work ethic, because of his tenacity. Well, I had a chance to have lunch yesterday with the guy that it was the first time I've ever met him in person. But we got to know each other via Facebook because he started watching these videos. And he said, I don't even know how I got turned on to him. I just started watching your Facebook video every day, and it had a huge impact in my life. And then I saw the story of your wife and how she stayed by your side through your addiction and how you guys have kept your marriage together. And I realized that after my divorce, had I had this kind of advice then, I could have made it last. But as we sat together over lunch with my wife and my son with me, and we had this conversation with him, we also realized how many mutual friends we had. How many of my friends from way back when are actually family members of his. How many times our lives could have, should have crossed paths, and they never did. And yet, now, through this social media, now through this video, through these leadership principles, there's a connection in our life, and I have a chance to influence and impact someone that I had no idea I had influence and impact on. The same is true in your life. There are going to be people whose lives you can touch and change at a distance. I'm challenging you to keep them in mind when you lead. The things that you say, the ideas that you share, the deeds that you do, they have much more reach than you can possibly imagine. They stretch way beyond the people you intend to influence. Please keep them in mind as you lead today. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.